So we're jumping in with today's Battletech vlog. Q&A. I've been pulling out some questions, looking over the past couple of vlogs where we've been exploring some Battletech Tactica aimed at new players to the game. Whether you've picked up the game of Armored Combat because it intrigued you, or perhaps from other wargaming systems, you're looking to jump into Battletech. So in no particular order, I'm going to push a few of these out in this vlog, and then, of course, we'll circle back around for the comments and see what we can establish. So the first question, Inner Sphere, the houses, the great houses, Davian, Kurita, are there any advantages or disadvantages to playing one faction or the other? Now, in-game lore, Battletech by itself, the rules apply to all mechs, all factions, all players. So you're not going to necessarily, by default, get an advantage by playing one house over the other. But if we jump into the narrative, this is where the lines get a little bit blurred, in that Battletech is a war game, but it's also a role-playing game. And those two can bolt on very well if you want to go in that direction. And an example of this would be, we explored the idea of mechs. Let's look at the Jenner, a classic mech. There are numerous Jenners across the Inner Sphere, but over time, the Succession Wars, most of them tend to reside in House Kurita, simply because maybe they started with more, or some of the automated factories just happen to find themselves in that piece of known space. So in that lore, it's a common Kurita mech, and it tends to be more well represented. Now, if you're playing the lore and you're playing red mechs, then certainly your light lances are going to have a Jenner in there. But that doesn't mean they don't exist in the other great houses. That doesn't mean if you're playing Davian, you can't play a Jenner. In the rules, from a wargaming perspective, everything is the same and everything is fair to everybody else. But once we look at the narrative, there might be some differences in there. And how you approach that is really up to you and your GM, or you and your player opponent kind of making that decision. Second Q&A builds on this, where we're looking through the tech manuals and we see certain notes, we see certain ideas. The Cyclops, this idea that the Cyclops is an assault mech, and I'm pulling directly from a comment. Cyclops, command and control, has a really powerful electronic warfare, electronic communication system. How is that represented in the game? Because as an assault mech, it's pretty good and I enjoy playing it, but it was designed as a command mech. So shouldn't there be some in-game bonuses? And we see this with other mechs also in the technical manual, where they talk about, well, this munitions feed can work better because of its location, granting it a higher rate of fire. But then you find out, wait, that autocannon 10 fires one autocannon 10 round, the same as the other mech. So again, in the rules, it's kind of a baseline where everything's equal. How do you want to play that from a narrative or role-playing perspective? Now, with those mechs, what you're going to see on some sites or in some manuals, there's this idea of design quirks or quirks. And these are advantages or disadvantages that a mech gets. These are optional rules because, again, generally speaking, all of the mechs in the core rules are fair. But if you decide to play with design quirks, this was an attempt later on in the game to take some of those ideas in the tech manuals and give them a little flavor. Give them a little bit of a change in rules or something to remember. Give them a command bonus, or give them some sort of bonus or potentially disadvantage, because there's disadvantages in there also based on it. But again, these are completely different. These are completely different rules. You can add them on. You have to remember them, but most games you wouldn't play with them, or you can choose not to play with them. Okay, jumping into lances. The idea of the lance. An assault lance, making an assault lance, or really, any type of lance. What is the best? Or what is a really potent and powerful and potent lance to do that? Now, this is a very open-ended question. I'd like to throw out like 4 mechs that would make a really powerful lance, but there's a couple of considerations to take advantage of and a couple of considerations to keep in mind. The first is really battle value. If I have unlimited battle value, or I shouldn't say unlimited, if I've got 10K battle value, Inner Sphere, that's a lot. That's a massive game. If I have 8K battle value, inner sphere. That's a lot. That's a big game too. I could put together a lance of all Atlases, Awesomes, and really, really potent and powerful mechs. And that's an assault lance that will crack most defenses, that will roll over most things. But that's a huge battle value. That's a huge battle value. And in game, if I take a lot of smaller units, this is where advantages versus disadvantages. If you take a lance or two of really potent, heavy assault mechs, and I choose to counter that by taking the Saladin is a hover tank. It has an autocannon 20 mounted on it. It's only got one shot. Armor, not that great. Paper thin. I mean, essentially, it's just like, let's take an autocannon 20, mount a turbine fan on it, and put a lawn chair so someone can like steer this thing. That's essentially this tank. But I use it as an example because I can put down 5, 6, 7, 8 of these, and based on the initiative system in Battletech, you can have a very powerful lance. If I get behind you, I'm going to smoke you on rear armor. So the game balances it out in terms of power with battle value and the way initiative works. Not that it's impossible, but you need to really be aware. If you put all that battle value in these potent mechs, you're going to be a wrecking crew. But there could be potential consequences if your opponent can mount an effective counter and pull it off. This is different than other war games, say like Warhammer 40,000, where you have a list of the most potent, powerful meta, and it just rolls over everything. There's nothing you can do to counter it. This is what GW says is the meta in the moment, and it destroys everything. And next month when they change it because of an FAQ or a new release or some years down the road, a new edition, things are constantly in flux. Battletech is much more balanced. Now, that said, an assault lance is a lot of fun to play, but this is true of all lances. Do you want it to be focused? Do you want it to be kind of generalized? Is there something you enjoy playing? So an example would be, let's say I want my assault lance to really get up there and smash things. This idea, physical attacks in Battletech are very potent. Punches, 1 in 6 chance to hit the head. Assault mechs, that multiplier on tonnage, massive. Kicks, if you have a Stalker or an Awesome, that tonnage kicking, it's going to tear the leg off of all mediums, lights, and it's going to really damage a heavy mech. So physical attacks in Battletech, the weight of these machines is potent. In designing an assault lance, if I say, look, I want to get up there and literally wreck face. I want to get up there and punch things. Now, I'm going to have guns on the way in. I'm going to be shooting. Even when I'm up there, I'm going to be shooting. But that designed assault lance would mean I really don't want assault mechs that have a lot of long-range missile or long-range support. It's going to kind of be wasted because I'm going to be running up there, maybe 1 or 2 packs. But as soon as I get close, I'm going to be under the minimums, and it's not going to be as effective. Likewise, if I'm going to be punching, maybe I want to look at assault mechs that don't have primary weapons in their hands. I want all those weapons in the torso, like the example of a Cyclops or other mechs. If I can get up there and right punch, left torso, autocannon, or if it's right torso, autocannon, I can't remember. Fire that off. Left torso, 2 or 3 medium lasers. Left torso, SRM pack. This idea, I want to look at mechs in that assault lance that have the hands free, but also weapons located center, left, right torso to damage. It could go the opposite way, though. I build assault lances based on missile boats. So I don't need short-range weaponry. I don't necessarily need speed. I want to focus everything, longbows, everything on those LRMs. Maybe you want somewhere in the middle. Maybe you want speed. So I can't just say, hey, here's the win-all assault lance. The idea is, from there, well, how do we build things out? What is the tactica? What is the delivery system? What is the game plan for this assault lance? Now, I will say this with mediums, and this is the fun plug and play of flipping through the tech manuals and really visualizing how can we use these tactics. Medium mechs, if we go by the narrative in Battletech, they're the most numerous mechs in the inner sphere because they're not only were they produced in mass numbers, they're good at everything. They've got more than one primary weapon, right? Light mechs, the Locust, the primary weapon stock is that medium laser, and it has machine guns. So in light mechs, what you often see is like one primary and two or three backup ones. When you jump to the medium tonnage, and we saw this in our mech reviews a couple of weeks back, I've pushed up to my Battletech playlist reviewing various mechs. When you jump into the mediums, now you've got two primaries and a secondary. I mean, look at the Wolverine, look at the Griffin, look at the Shadowhawk. You've got more than one or two type weapons. But you've now got a decent amount of armor. Not that we ever want to get hit in Battletech, but we're doing our best to avoid it. But you could take a hit or two here and there without immediately collapsing into a heap. You've also got jump capability. You've also got a decent amount of speed. You're not as fast as a light, but you're not as slow as a heavy or an assault. So what you see with medium mechs is, yes, you could also specialize in a specific role, but there is tremendous strength in building your medium lances to check off all the major boxes. Speed, check. Jump capability, check. Weapons, 2 or 3 or 4, check. Maybe armor on the higher side, check. If you go for that generalized and you take a mech that doesn't have some of those capabilities, then you've crippled your lance. Perfect stock example. I've got 3 mechs with jump capability and 1 mech with no jump capability. Well, now, in terms of mediums, that means I might as well really have no jump capability, because if I'm in City Fight, City Tech, I'm only going to be as quick as that slowest mech. Same thing if you attach an Irby to a lance, everyone all of a sudden moves really, really slow because you want to have overlapping lanes of fire. You want to have interlocking. So lance building is really about asking those questions. Just what exactly do you want to deliver on the tabletop? How do we do it? How is your opponent going to stop it? And how are you going to counter that counter to it? Okay, missile boats, vehicles, missile boats, LRMs, SRMs. In Battletech, what you'll see when you move into certain mechs is they will be defined to one very, very specific role. The example is the longbow. Archer versus longbow. Longbow stock. The primary weapons are the 2 LRM 20 packs and the 2 5-packs. All of its battle value is primarily in that. It's a missile boat in that its job is to get into position and just rain down real time dozens and dozens of LRM missiles. Compare that to the Archer. The Archer certainly has 2 LRM 20 packs, but it has a brace of lasers, effective medium lasers. It can work at that role, but it also can get up there and punch and brawl a little bit. So missile boats, we also see with vehicles, the LRM carrier. LRM carrier, it's like, let's take a giant tractor, slap on some light armor, and spend the rest of the tonnage and the internals on just mounting missiles. 20, 40, 60 real-time missiles. Think about that. You've got 3. I'm like a quick sell salesman. Quick Sell is one of the companies in the Battletech universe that their products are notoriously shoddy and don't really work, and you kind of get what you get, but they're really, really cheap, and the parts are really, really cheap. So here I am, whether you're a warlord or an inner sphere contractor, I'm trying to sell you my LRMs, but think about that in the game. 3 LRM 20 packs. You take 2 or 3 of those. Real time, that's 180 missiles firing down. You've got a spotter in a Karnov or an APC or just some sort of infantry or a locust bug mech running around. That's got bite. That's going to make you nervous. And if I'm not indirect and I can square you away direct with no modifiers and I'm not moving, I cut down the modifiers on my movement. So that LRM carrier gets into place. It's not cruising, it's not flanking, it's standing still. I'm at the medium range band. I'm going to light you up. I mean, that's got some bite. You're paying for it in battle value. Now, there are some cheaper alternatives, but they don't have that bite. On the opposite side, missile boats, the SRM carrier pumps out tons and tons and tons of short-range missiles. That's more of an ambush-type tactic because you definitely don't have the armor, you don't have the speed, and you don't have the long-range punch. So a missile boat in Battletech is a mech or a vehicle that 100% or most percent, 90%, will focus on delivering missiles. If you can counter that, I'm in trouble. My 2 longbows, I'm going to just blast you away. You get up close, I've got no close-in work. I don't have any armor, relatively speaking, for the size. That's why I have to have some sort of bodyguard there. Usually I put a T-bolt there, a Warhammer, or 2 Demolisher tanks. Demolisher tank has 2 autocannon 20s per tank on a turret, great armor. That's going to deter you. Exactly what I throw down, again, really depends on battle value and what we're playing. Because I'd like to take 2 longbows, 3 LRM carriers. I'd like to put down a Warhammer. I'd like to put down 2 Demolishers. I mean, my wish list is like through the roof. Battle value is like just insane. So you do have limitations within what you're playing. Okay, that's the first round. Those are some excellent questions. But the cross theme against this is Battletech, and this is a little bit challenging if you're a new player. Battletech is very much an open sandbox type war game. There are the core rules, but then there's the narrative. And that narrative is just how much do you want to delve into it? How much do you want to play into it from that perspective? And you can either come to an agreement with your opponent, or if you have a GM kind of running a game, making some house rules as you go, the narrative supports that. The narrative allows that. But likewise, we can have this open line of communication where we can play Battletech core rules, which means I can show up at your place in your amazing gaming table, and I bring my miniatures, and I bring whatever snacks we want. We've got the soundtrack, we've got the 80s music, we've got everything for that Battletech experience. We can communicate with the same core rules and Total Warfare rules and have a great game, and have that interface and that interaction. And then from there, of course, take it as deep or as in-depth as we want. So I'm going to post this up literally like 5 or 6 minutes. Once we complete, I'll leave the comments open, and we'll just keep this rolling for a little bit of a Battletech Q&A. And of course, veteran Battletech players on my channel, I always appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the comments. You have transformed my game literally with some of your ideas. Some of them, honestly, I think I would have figured it out on my own, but it would have been a high price to pay, meaning like 20 games in, I would have figured it out, as opposed to me benefiting from your wisdom and your shared tactica, where I read this and I'm like, yes, that's a great idea. But then also, full disclosure, there's a couple of Battletech concepts, mechs and machines, that I've never looked at, that I can say I wouldn't look at. And by reading the comments, I'm like, wow, yes, that is a great idea. Now I have an excuse to purchase more mechs, and I have someone, I won't say anonymous on YouTube, because I only know you by your YouTube handle name, but now I have deniability. So I can order that stuff, and if I get caught by Mrs. Fritz, it's like, well, I don't know, some random dude on the internet said I needed this, so I had to go buy it. I have that deniability. So I'm going to leave that up, and I appreciate the Battletech Q&A from the veterans, from myself. We'll keep this rolling. Now has literally never been a better time to jump into the Battletech narrative and the Battletech universe.